show. Welcome to the Nonprofit Report, your weekly update on nonprofit organizations, issues, and leaders. I'm your host, Mark Oppenheim, and today we will talk about the importance of public media with guests Lindsay Bierma, CEO of UNC-TV in North Carolina, Tim Fallon, CEO of PBS 39 in the Lehigh Valley of Pennsylvania, and Joshua Adams, station manager of Houston Public Media in Houston, Texas. A reminder to Zoom attendees that we will take 3 snap polls during the show. We'll announce results, and questions submitted through the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen will be included in our discussion. So thank you all for joining us. It is so wonderful to see you. We've collaborated on a number of occasions, Lindsay and Tim and Joshua, Hope Springs Eternal. And I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be able to talk about public media because we're trying in our efforts to emulate your efforts. So let's start off. Joshua, talk about Houston Public Media and the services that you provide and how those services are unique to your broadcast area.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Absolutely, and thank you for having me. This is it's exciting. Anytime you get an opportunity to talk about public media, to talk about PBS in Houston, we're licensed to the University of Houston along with an NPR radio station. So we have the joy of being a joint licensee. And really the pandemic and the stay-at-home working has helped us really focus in our organization, our commitment to the community, be that through news that we bring folks on radio and digital, be that arts coverage. We've expanded both our PBS arts programming, but also our relationships with the Houston Symphony, with the opera to put those over the radio. And then education, our commitment through PBS Learning Media has really blossomed in a way that has helped, I believe parents at home have a resource to go to. We pivoted our entire education team from what they were doing and said, do nothing else but make these at-home resources available for everyone. So in the state of Texas, all of those regional teams joined together and literally linked up curriculum with programs. So we really felt like we were super serving the community. And that's really the goal of public media, is to super serve the community.
And you recognize the traumatic time that we're in. So you're bringing people together and you're collaborating in somewhat unaccustomed ways, but it's the most natural way in the world because you are public media. Lindsay, you also have this huge territory to cover. You are UNC-TV, but you really cover the entire state, don't you?
Yes, we do. It is. Thank you for having me today, and it's great to be here. UNC-TV was founded in 1955 as the University of North Carolina Educational Television, and that was probably, I think, 15 years before PBS was launched. So we were a pioneer in education, and it was the vision of UNC President Bill Friday, and it is core to our mission today. We have 4 broadcast channels in addition to social media platforms, as well as YouTube and other digital platforms. But we have recently, in the pandemic, like many PBS stations, we have partnered with the state's Department of Public Instruction and have dedicated one of our 4 broadcast channels entirely to at-home learning. So we're very proud of that work and very proud of the work that our colleagues across the nation have been doing to serve our most vulnerable youth. We also have been embedded in the Governor's Emergency Operations Center. So as the backbone for the state's emergency communications, we've been providing bilingual Spanish and English briefings daily as needed, and also have a weekly 30-minute interview with the state's health director, who is a trusted source of information during a time of so much misinformation. So we're very proud of that work as well.
The thing that I think that's so interesting about when you summarize your work, and of course you're also doing things like rebroadcasting content from other places, but this idea of covering not the political side so much, but the governmental side, and making sure that people are connected to what is going on in the legislature that affects their lives. The whole idea of providing educational outreach, the whole idea of binding the state together, all these kinds of things are not going to be the kinds of things that commercial entities are necessarily going to be positioned to do so immediately, because there's high expense and low return, right? You're not going to necessarily get the kind of viewership that you'll get from Kim Kardashian's latest state of undress, right? Right, Tim? I mean, when you're talking about helping this economic juggernaut, that the Lehigh Valley that had fallen on some difficult times with the removal of the steel industry as competition went global, and now there's this reblossoming, this real vitality about the Lehigh Valley that has always been at its core. You're actually being an economic driver, although you are a nonprofit.
That's a great way to put it. Thanks, Mark. And again, thank you for having us be part of this. Actually, you just triggered a nice thought about that. Last week we had we used the OVO or OVI rather platform to do a presentation of a documentary that we had done on Bethlehem Steel. And one of our former board members was the last CEO of Bethlehem Steel. And he joined that conversation with the head of the Economic Development Corporation, Don Cunningham. We actually broke the platform. We had more participants. It was over 1,000 participants. They were only set up they've never had anything approaching 1,000 participants on this particular platform. So it was a wonderful explanation of the value that Bethlehem Steel had and public media in working with our economic development folks to really share the message of what a great community we were and will be in the future as we go forward. Just wanted to touch on what Lindsay and Joshua were both mentioning, and I think it's throughout the United States that public media stations have engaged in a much more robust manner with their departments of education. We recently were awarded $11.5 million to support two different initiatives that we're working on with the Department of Education. One is called Learning at Home, which is very similar to what Lindsay was just sharing with the Learning Channel. And we're also standing up a new pilot program called Data Casting, which is where we're utilizing some of our broadcast bandwidth to send one-way internet connectivity to places that don't have internet access. And so for those students who can't go to school, but they have a television set, we'll be able to reach them with content. And we have colleagues in South Carolina, Indiana, and the Virgin Islands who are also setting up similar pilots just like this as well. So great public-private, non-commercial partnerships evolving from this.
It's so interesting. We just finished a poll in which we asked whether locally produced or nationally produced programs were the predominant reasons for people to view. And the resounding answer is yes. 50% people say locally produced programs are the most important reason to watch, and 50% people said that nationally and internationally produced programs. And that's a real tribute to public media, this whole idea of being both local and national, international. The other thing that I think is so interesting about all answers here is that you actually provide the lubrication in the market for doing things quickly that are just in the public interest. So when you all, it would be great to talk with you about how you develop your content, how you develop your programming. How do you do that? Is it a unitary thing? Are you looking at what can advertise and get you the most money, which is, any commercially oriented organization has to think about income, what's going to attract attention. How do you do it in the non-commercial space? Lindsay, let's start with you, and then we'll go around to Tim and then Joshua.
So in an ideal world, I would have a $200 million endowment to fund content production. That would be wonderful. So if anybody out there wants to provide that, call me. Content production funding is enormously challenging, particularly when given all of the economic uncertainties, it has been difficult to find. That said, we recently launched a new program and have become, we're very excited about PBS Terra Channel. And UNC-TV has a program called Overview on the Terra Channel. And that was a combination of private support, some funding from CPB and other sources, but primarily private support to develop and launch this program, which highlights environmental issues across the United States through drone cinematography primarily. So the first episode that launched was about how the Blue Ridge almost lost their blue. And it was, I learned, like I do from everything on PBS, I learned something that I didn't know. And it was about how air pollution coming from surrounding states was really creating a serious health hazard and impacting the air quality in the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, and changing them from blue to this white haze, all of which has been corrected. And but we'll be doing more programming like that. Similarly, with local programming, we get significant funding from Visit NC because they recognize and have acknowledged many times that our program, North Carolina Weekend, drives tourism across the state. So we've heard that anecdotally over and over again. And if you think about a program, we were the presenting station for a very highly rated program, A Chef's Life, and along with South Carolina, and then Somewhere South. And Kinston, North Carolina is now on the national culinary map as a result of that program, A Chef's Life. And that is directly related to the power of local television.
So we're actually coming into these local environments. If I have never visited North Carolina, I can have access to North Carolina culture. If I have never visited Lehigh Valley, I can have access to what is going on in Lehigh Valley, can't I, Tim?
Absolutely. And a quick shout out to Lindsay there. Having been to that restaurant in Kinston, North Carolina, it's worth the trip.
Home of Michael Jordan, right? Kinston, North Carolina.
Very close. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But yes, this is how we bring our communities to the rest of the world. So whether we have the good fortune to be the national presenting station for a show called Articulate, and it is very generously funded by the Neubauer Family Foundation. So that is a traditional method of funding a rather expensive and very valuable program. And we also get to tag that with things that relate to the Lehigh Valley. And actually, we're encouraging Discover Lehigh Valley to be engaged with that show as an opportunity to showcase just what we have to bring to the rest of the world. Given that we now live in our dining rooms from a work standpoint, we need to live vicariously through the opportunities that public media presents, whether it's Rick Steves' great travel programs or the wonderful locally produced programs that each of our stations do. We actually last year did over 500 hours of locally produced programming. So our community supports it, and therefore we're able to fund it to have that quantity and quality of local programming.
And Joshua, Houston is one of the most diverse cities in the world, and certainly in the United States. You also have this enormous geographic area. You have a very diversified economy. So you have a lot of different interests and a lot of different issues that micro communities within the Houston environs face. How do you deal with that kind of complexity? You're the big dog here, but you also have quite a big challenge to climb every day.
Yeah, you can I think look at it as a challenge, and frequently it is, but it is mostly an opportunity because with that diverse, just the myriad of diverse communities and their geographic diversity, their socioeconomic diversity. Obviously, the demographics is very diverse as well. But the great thing about Houston is that everybody wants to know what's going on in Houston. So maybe you're telling the story of something that's happening in the energy market. Everyone cares. Maybe you're telling a story about something that's happening, with food and culture. Well, everybody cares. Maybe you're talking about transportation or education. Everybody cares. And so it broadens or expands the table that of what you can bring forward to be a part of your local content, be that through television, through radio, through the digital offerings. You sort of set this part of the conversation up asking about how do you program for that? At our organization, one of the things that we always say, and you can hopefully ask anybody in my organization in programming and they'll give you the same answer. Why did you pick that show? Why are you advocating for that show? And what they'll say is, because I think it'll serve our community better. And then you can measure that. Well, how do you measure it? Well, you measure it through ratings. Ratings can be a measure of how many eyeballs are going to see this underwriting or see this opportunity, and that brings in dollars. But that model is really, really built for commercial. The model that we sort of use is the same data, but it's a measure of efficiency and impact in the community. So if we run a show and it gets a pretty good rating, we're able to go, that's how many people we touched. Now, fundraisers, go take that and talk about that impact in the community. Because you have to remember, when you're talking about a public media station, we're spending donor dollars. We're not getting money from, the network. We're not getting money from the university. We are using donor dollars. So whether you give us $5 or whether you give us $500,000, if you ask me how I spent your money, I need to have an answer that's better than, well, the ratings were good, so we ran it. And I just see that as a duty of being a steward of those donor dollars in the community. And we really try to push that onto everybody that impacts programming. And that can be our own internal folks who are producing and developing shows. It can be the vendors with whom we work to bring us content, or it could be the programmers with whom we work that help us pick and select, well, this one got a great rating, but this one seems like a better fit. Okay, what's really at stake here with, a half a rating point here or there? Let's pick the one that helps really super serve the community, because that's a better message to take out, with your marketing folks, with your donor folks, your fundraising folks.
How do you all maintain balance so that you end up with, and Joshua, if you can jump in first in this one, how do you maintain balance when you're trying to ensure that you are addressing the various needs? But we are famously in a very polarized society, right? So even non-political decisions as to what you cover suddenly become why are you covering, just the thing that I said before the show, please everybody mask up, even if you don't believe it, just to give everybody peace of mind, and it might save a life. That could be seen as a political statement. I just think my own view is that it's just being nice, right, and considerate. How do you deal with that? How do you make sure that you remain in the center, Joshua?
So in our newsroom, we stick to our standards. We follow NPR and PBS's ethical standards for news coverage, and as long as you stick to that and you stick to facts and you stick to both sides, you're never going to be able to take the politics out of it. But politics aren't facts most of the time. You stick to the facts, you're able to defend that. And I say defend if people push back on it. Oh, you said wear a mask. Well, this is what the data shows. This is what the data proves. I think that the other piece of it, though, that's important is that, and look, we're a famously sort of, the perception is we are a more liberal organization because of the news we do and our affiliation with NPR. We're in a fairly liberal city in the heart of a red state. So it's a big mix. One of the things that we have actively been doing for several years is inviting seated elected officials to come talk to their constituents. We do it on one of our talk shows, congressmen, senators, local politicians, and we say, we want you to come for an hour and we want you to talk about the things you're doing, the bills that you are putting in, the items that you're supporting, or the things that you want your constituents to know. And really the only sort of rules we place on it are that you can't campaign. If you are running for re-election, you got to get elected before you can come back. We don't do it inside certain windows because we don't want to, we want to be clear about the election process and cycle. But it's actually proven to be great, and we get a ton of feedback. Why'd you put that person on? they were talking about XYZ, and that's not what I expect from my station. Well, you know what? We're here to serve the community, and the community elected this person. So we're here to let them speak to their constituents. It's just one way that we feel it really brings everyone to the table, and to be fair, politicians like to be in front of the microphone. So let's put them in front of the microphone and let them talk.
And Tim, you don't know what that's about, right? I mean, Pennsylvania is not be important this year. Lehigh Valley is in central to Pennsylvania.
Right.
You know none of that, right?
Right. So if you live in Pennsylvania, you hear this over and over, that there are 3 counties in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania that went Obama, Trump. And one of those counties is where this backdrop behind me is located, Bethlehem, in Northampton County. So we are absolutely in the thick of it. And so we are very, very careful. Joshua, we echo those standards that your newsroom utilizes. I would also suggest that in our hiring practices, especially at the higher levels, we bring in folks that have 25 and 30 years of experience. They know what real journalism and being right down the middle is all about. In the same way, I'll use as an example, 2 years ago, when many senators, especially Republican senators, were having very difficult times with town halls. We hosted a town hall for Senator Toomey, and we had been alerted by his staff to expect significant challenges. And so we worked with the local police department to set up everything appropriately. There were protesters outside in front of the building. It was classic public media. It was civil discourse. The questions were difficult for the senator. He handled them very, very well. We broadcast it live, and it's exactly what we're supposed to do. So yes, we are actively engaged. We don't get a whole lot of pushback because we're also relatively nascent. It's 2 years since we launched our reporter corps, but we are so concerned with the lack of objective journalism in our greater community as the newspapers are shutting down, that we felt it was so important that we launch our own news organization, first for television. We do a nightly news program, 30 minutes every night, and now we are running a radio station and doing 16 newscasts a day. So this is what we have to do for our community. It's what our community expects, and we will continue to do this going forward.
And it's so important, right? This idea here that everything has to be polarized, we don't need to buy into it. We can say that if we're going to be journalists or we're going to be public media professionals, no matter what our private and individual political beliefs might be, our highest ideal is to give a fair exposure of information, of respecting all these differences and making sure that we're serving it. So, Lindsay, in your state, you have no election stuff going on. I know it's not North Carolina is not perennially in the news as much as Pennsylvania, but you also have to ensure that these different views are given the kind of exposure that are required, always with a fealty to truth and forthrightness, right?
Absolutely. I strongly believe in what the late great Gwen Ifill said about PBS, that it is our responsibility to bring light, not heat, to the issues of greatest concern. And in our case, the issues of greatest concern to North Carolinians. And I do believe we have a moral obligation to be a unifying force in a deeply divided state. So we do have public affairs programming and political opinion programming that I will get, I will get feedback from both ends of the political spectrum, which I think is a good thing. Yeah. And I do, because that means that we're representing both ends of the political spectrum, and our support comes from both ends of the political spectrum. So we do have an obligation to represent all points of view and to reflect the values and the commitments of the state of North Carolina and of North Carolinians. We've had I think I can't remember how many interviews we've conducted so far, but we have 30-minute interviews with candidates from both parties up and down the ballot here, and then we're hosting the gubernatorial debate in October. Again, we've had interviews with people like John Bolton and our senators, and none of it has been sensationalist. We don't have people shouting at each other. We don't have people denigrating each other. It's very civil discourse, and we get consistently positive feedback about transcending the vitriol that is so common to our political discourse right now.
I think it comes down to, is it more important to win a particular point or a particular perspective, or is it more important to do what's required to strengthen America that serves all people? And there are going to be different views. So if you're going to be in the latter camp, right, Tim, you kind of have to figure out what those views are, what those perspectives are, what those interests are. We just did a poll, and the poll was really on where people thought that public media had its most distinctive contribution. 80% of people, roughly evenly split, felt that arts and entertainment on the one hand, but also education on the other. And then there were some people who were interested in news and politics and so on. But this idea of serving different interests, different educational interests, different arts interests, but also different interests across the state is so much of a guiding light.
And I would make the argument that news and information falls under our educational mission. To your point, we provide the entire story so that you can make your intellectual decision based on having all of the facts, as opposed to presenting the quote unquote winning perspective. That is not what public media does, nor should it ever, and nor does it. And arts and entertainment are always going to be an integral part of public media, quite honestly, because we're the place that you go to find things that are not necessarily commercially viable, and therefore our brethren on the commercial side won't air them because they can't have advertising run against it. But we, on the other hand, will provide this so that you have that breadth of entertainment. And if you are a lover of opera, that you will see that, or a lover of some other types of music that don't necessarily generate large commercial followings, that is where you go. And then, of course, we might have little programs like Downton Abbey that seem to gather some attention and make a significant change, especially right now when we need to escape from being consumed by our political coverage. A couple of episodes of Downton Abbey really do kind of bring the blood pressure down. So it's a wonderful thing.
So I love your point about even the news being about education, that perspective of transmitting information. One of the things that we asked in the last poll was, do you trust public media to provide straight, factual information? And we said it as a question versus commercial media. 2/3 of the people thought that public media could be trusted more than commercial media. About 1/3 as much as commercial media, and a few people felt that public media was less trustworthy than commercial media. So let's talk a little bit about the disinformation age, and we'll go. We'll have Joshua, if you could comment first, then Tim, and we'll end up with Lindsay. Lindsay giving Lindsay the final word. We're in a disinformation age.
Right.
People are constantly saying facts aren't facts. Doctors who are researchers and reach certain conclusions, we have to question the experts. We have to question what's coming out of different departments of the government.
Climatologists, it's ever present. The reality is that facts are facts, and that's what our business is built on: facts and perspective. You made the comment earlier, is it better to win or better to serve the country? I think at least at our station, but I do believe public media has a sort of shared idea that it's not ours to decide either. it's ours to make a case so that a listener or viewer can make a determination. Do I need to win, or do I need an option that's better for the country? Our goal in the light not heats, to borrow my colleagues, both of my colleagues saying that, it is really to shine a light. And you shine a light on an item or an issue. And when you do that, you've got to bring everything into the light. There can't be any shadows, and that goes for whether you want to call it facts and alternative facts. That goes for whether you want to call it, right and wrong or perception. But it is your duty to bring your expertise and your reasonable expectation of what the opposing side is to the conversation. In our newsroom and in our market, we serve basically a pretty well established kind of 50-50 split, if you want to just say red blue, more or less. So the reality is that on any given issue, half the people might feel one way and half the people might feel the other way. So we tell our news folks, so consider that. Let's consider asking these questions from the point of view here, and let's consider asking the questions from the point of view here. And does that change how you're going to craft that conversation? I guarantee you in every instance it does. Use the Fox mentality and use the, whoever on this side, CNBC or MSNBC mentality. And let's find that middle ground that brings the most people in to understand both sides of the conversation. And when you continually do that, I think that you're able to hold yourself up as being fair and balanced. That's why your poll numbers look the way they do.
And you have to grasp the fact that there is not just one perspective worthy of exposure, right? Right. Tim?
Absolutely. Now, and we have to take the tin hats, or the tinfoil caps off. We leave those out of the conversation. But as we look at such as racial diversity and the issues that have really surfaced over the past summer, we have spent an awful lot of time covering that, both from a news perspective and from community conversations and the like, and doing our level best to engage, because it is very multifaceted, the talking points and discussion ideas around this. Unfortunately, we happen to have a contingent of, and I guess I'm giving away a bias here, but of the Klan in our area. And so there are some significant challenges as we go through these discussions. But we have, and it was a question asked a bit earlier, we have enhanced our programming around this topic so that we could be as inclusive of as many viewpoints as we possibly could, going so far as a new weekly program called Courageous Conversations to engage multiple constituencies around that.
And so race is always the third rail, and trying to deal with issues of transformation when the personnel of media stations themselves need to transform, need to gain a more diversified perspective through lived experience. It means hiring differently, thinking differently. Lindsay, how are you confronting these kinds of issues that are so important to a strong America?
It's the media environment now. I think it people are, through algorithms and all sorts of other devices, people are basically viewing like they're choosing a team, right? You're on team MSNBC or team Fox, and you live in a particular, or depending on how the algorithms shake out on Facebook for you, you live within a, it's well known that you live within a certain information bubble. Where the news is sensationalized, it's highlighting problems, it's getting you angry, it's making you depressed. We are trying to stay focused,
right?
Sorry?
Making you click, right?
Yes,
click,
right,
click,
right,
click,
right.
watch.
And driving revenue,
Oh my God, I need to see what outrageous thing the next, it's
Yes.
ridiculous.
Yes. and it's not providing any solutions. So as we evolve and continue to develop our public affairs strategy, we are focused on programming that highlights solutions across the state. So it may be looking at a problem that a particular community is facing in rural North Carolina and talking to an individual or an organization that is doing something to solve that problem or address that issue that would be scalable across the state and across the nation. It's called solutions journalism. It's not new. It is a movement which is taking root and has strong support. And I do think that as we continue, as I said, as we continue to evolve and develop our public affairs strategy, without the benefit of a newsroom, I think that will be our continued area of focus as we, I always like to say we are non-commercial, and that means we are nonpartisan and we are non-toxic.
You all
That's a great way to say it.
isn't it? Isn't it? You all, I'm a total fanboy of public media, and not because public media parrots back to me the positions that I already had. Public media has forced me to constantly rethink and constantly allow in my own life, in our own work, voices that have different solutions that promise through collaboration and through discussion to evolve solutions that any one perspective was unable to alone develop, right? So that sort of mixing it up is so much a part of your mission. Lindsay Bierma of UNC-TV in North Carolina, Tim Fallon of PBS 39 in Lehigh Valley, and Joshua Adams of Houston Public Media. Thank you so much for sharing your work with us. That's the Nonprofit Report all. Everybody stay safe, mask up if you can, and have a great day. We'll see you next Thursday.
Thank you.